So, hi, Jason. What was your first computer?
Oh, my first computer was a Commodore 64. Um, my dad brought that home, I think, was in the fourth grade, and I was hooked pretty quick. Lots of memories of reading through the assembly language opcodes and writing CB Basic. It was good times.
Yeah, good times. But I mean, fourth grade, you never played? You started to hack, immediately, or?
Well, there was a lot of game playing for sure. Yeah, a lot of video games on that thing, but eventually started trying to write software, figuring out how it works, and
When it flipped from playing games to writing software, or to desire to program something.
you know, I don't know. I was always a pretty curious kid, and I remember probably the earliest memory I can think of is how did they do that was an old Ghostbusters game when they made the computer talk to me. Like, how in the world did they do that? So I set out to try to figure it out. I never quite got to that level, but I think that was probably a big part of it. Just wanted to figure out how in the world they made the little machine do that.
There's a Ghostbusters game with a C64.
Oh yeah, it was fabulous.
I never heard it.
If
So
you're,
interesting. Uh-huh.
yep, I think you can find the ROM somewhere, or maybe some videos. But it was I spent a lot of time on that one. That was a good one.
Okay, so this was the beginning of programming, Ghostbusters.
Yeah, probably it was
Okay.
a big influence. Yeah.
So, and what was your first, I would say, piece of software which worked, besides, Hello World?
Earliest, most complex thing I can think of was a really bad DOS screensaver.
Okay.
My first PC was an old 286, 8 megahertz, 2 mega RAM, had a turbo button that would go all the way up to 12 megahertz. And I wrote a screensaver using uh, the old x86 assembler code, and it worked pretty well. If there were any screen updates, it kind of poked through,
Okay.
so it didn't quite blank it, but it would blank the screen and then restore it later when you hit the keyboards. I was pretty proud of that.
Okay.
That was late high school, probably.
Okay. And the basic adventures, there was nothing reasonable. So what you did with basic?
No, I don't recall anything real significant with
Okay.
Basic. We did, there was a Run magazine, if you're familiar with that.
Hmm.
It was an old C64 magazine that ran for years and years. They would have program listings in it,
Okay.
so we would get those and sit for hours typing in the source code and running the program. So I would kind of tinker with that and just try to understand what was going on with some of that, but no real significant basic
Okay.
programming for me.
And then you go to 286 just because. Why? Why you got the computer?
Well, that was I think it was my sophomore year in high school, and I was just ready to, I guess the PC revolution was well underway, but the 64 was kind of old by that point, and was wanting to move up to something more modern.
Hmm.
So with the help of my parents, I bought it on credit,
Okay.
which is not prudent, but I did it. So I bought that just to kind of step up into a more modern world of computing, and jumped right into assembler on that, which was kind of a natural progression from some of the stuff I was studying on the 64. And Pascal 64 was probably my first high level language. Uh,
So there
yeah,
was no
so
no
just
no gaming on the PC.
well, there was probably a lot of that too. I
Okay.
certainly once college rolled around, I spent a lot more time playing games than I probably should have, but still a good deal of hacking on that for sure.
Yeah, but this it's unusual, right? So for a kid, to start hacking. So this is why I always want to know why someone starts to programming if there is another opportunity to play games.
Yeah, I mean, I did both, but there was a lot of my free time was driven just by a curiosity of what made it work. Um, like my first real introduction to databases before I had any formal training
Hmm.
through the university was um, I'd kind of pick a project that scratched an itch of some sort, and like, well, that needs a database, so I downloaded a very early version of Postgres. I can't remember what version it was, but
Hmm.
so I learned how to install and manage a database, and creating tables and querying all that. And it was just I don't know, just a curiosity, wanting to
Mhm.
make the machine do something useful for me.
At the beginning, Postgres was called differently, right? It was not Postgres. There was different name, I think. Wasn't
Uh, well, that I don't recall.
so I would have to look it up because I also use
Yeah.
Postgres, but I don't think it was called Postgres. There was a different name so earlier. So I will have to check it up and
Okay.
in worst case, put it to the show notes. Okay. So
Yeah.
so you used the 286 and your first program was a screensaver. What happened then? So you stick with assembly or?
If you've done any assembly, it's hard to do stuff
Mhm.
interesting in that. And I got the Pascal compiler and was starting to work through that. Really, I think from there I moved into Delphi, if
Okay.
you remember that
Yeah.
from Borland. Did a lot of work with Delphi. I actually had a job doing that professionally at one point, which was kind of nuts. But I did move on to higher level languages. It was primarily through the university with C at the time.
Mhm.
We did a lot of C, and of course, I mean, we went through COBOL and Scheme and Prolog and some things. Um, and I actually did a fair bit of PHP in
Okay.
college. It was a lot of that was a practical consideration because it was really easy to deploy
Mhm.
PHP.
Mhm.
You just upload it and run. So I did a lot of that. Yeah, that and C. C++ was actually or C was my first professional language
Mhm.
right out of college. Um, and then moved to C++ in another shop. And then finally on to Java.
Okay. So but it was always clear to you that you would like to study computer science.
Yeah, I think so. From an early age, I was fascinated by the machines and loved working on them.
Mhm.
I entered college as a computer science major and never really looked back.
Okay. So you enjoyed your college life.
I I did. I had a good time. I mean, I studied. I
Mhm.
worked hard. I played some video games, and but yeah, it was a good 4 years for me.
Okay. So what you did during your college time? So some leisure projects or just studying, and what is your first job after the college? So what was the transition from college to work life?
Okay. Well, I worked a lot through college,
Okay.
so there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of leisure time. I worked at a grocery store, so it wasn't anything real exciting. But um, I did my senior year as I started looking past college. I worked in the computer lab as a PC tech, basically. So I had a little bit of hands-on networking stuff, which was fun. But um, as I when I graduated college, I moved went to work for Walmart,
Hmm.
doing some C programming on a uh, decision support system,
Okay.
DSS, working with the logistics teams, writing C code with some really arcane input data and things. So college itself was a lot of working my way through college, leisure when I can get it, and then just straight into the working world. I did actually work for an internet provider in college
Okay.
my senior year, doing tech support for dial-up modems,
Oh,
which was fun.
this sounds fun.
Uh, it you know a lot of the calls are exactly the same, so you kind of get to the point where I'd literally lean back in my chair and just kind of close my eyes and picture the screens and walk them through it because you'd see the same screen 10 or 15 times a night. And um, but I got to write some TCL, if you remember
Yeah.
that, a Scotty script doing some SNMP work against the modem banks to get connection speeds and times and things like that.
Hmm.
So when users would call, they would say, "I'm having trouble with my modem. I can't stay connected." We could ask the modem and say, "Oh, you've been online for 2.5 hours." That kind of thing to help troubleshoot
Hmm.
uh, people and hardware. um,
But this was
so
fun,
that
right?
was
This was like like
oh
cyber feeling, like Matrix almost, right?
oh yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I had a great time doing that. Figured out how to make it work.
What is your
Yeah,
favorite?
it was.
What is your favorite modem back then? So I had the robotics, US robotics. I remember.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yep, I had a US Robotics. As part of my work there, I got to participate in the 56K
Hmm.
trials, if you
Hmm.
remember that, going
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
14.4 to 56. So I had a USR external modem flashed with the firmware. And I, at one point, had that online for 2 weeks straight. We had an extra landline in our in the house I was renting, so I was running that constantly, and loved that modem. It was a very reliable machine for me.
Was it US Robotics? No, you said something different.
Yes, yeah,
it
US Robotics. Yeah,
yeah, okay. So it also looked nice. So I also liked the modem. Do we have some German modems? With Elsa, I think was the name. So, but I never used them. I always had the US Robotics one dial-up. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. And the DSS, the decision stuff at Walmart, it sounds almost like AI, you know.
It was a little bit. It didn't make decisions for us, but it was. It helped present data to people that were planning store capacities and shipping routes and things. That sort of stuff. It was for the logistics team as they tried to plan trucking routes and what to put on the truck and that kind of thing. So it was interesting. I was there for a year, and a lot of that stuff was kind of over my head at the time. So it was definitely a learning experience. I learned a lot, but there was a lot that I just had to kind of accept on faith and move on.
Okay.
But it was a very neat, very good environment.
Which year was it roughly?
That would have been 1997.
Wow, so Java was already around.
Yes, but there wasn't any, not in my area of Walmart. There might have been. There were, I think, 1,500 people in the information systems division.
Wow.
So my area was C running on IRIX Unix box against an Informix database. So it was and it had been around for quite some time, but
okay.
No Java there for me.
Okay, what was your next job then?
Well, I moved to a guy I worked with, left the company and started another one, and kind of recruited me to join it was a medical records retrieval.
Okay.
That's actually the name of the company. Where if you apply for insurance, you would submit some information, and then this company would then contact the various medical providers to get those records. We would scan them and send them to the insurance company. So our job was to modernize the system they were using. I want to say it was a FoxPro based system. Okay. So they had these little, databases sitting on people's workstations, and we built up a team that built a kind of a workflow engine that would track the progress of a request to the system. It was a C++ system.
Okay.
Running against an Oracle database on Windows. Okay. I was pretty proud of that system. It was pretty complex, and had a lot of smart people working on it. And we needed a user interface for that, obviously for the customer service reps to use. And we were using Borland's C++ builder for the back-end stuff, but that didn't seem real appropriate for writing GUIs. I mean, you can do it, but there's a lot of manual memory management that we're trying to avoid. We didn't want the GUI crashing too much, so that's when we brought in jBuilder, another Borland. I was a big Borland fan, so I
was also a Borland fan, but I thought you would start with Delphi. It was very similar to jBuilder, but jBuilder was great actually. Which version? 3, I suppose, right?
I think that sounds right. Yeah. It was like Swing 1.1 or something.
Yeah.
It was early on, although we were using, I guess, they didn't call it VCL. Was it JCL maybe?
JBCL, I think. JBCL, so like Java Borland class library or something like this. JBCL.
Yeah, something like that. We built the UI in that, and it was certainly faster to develop than C++ would have been. It was still pretty slow. Java on the desktop wasn't fast, but it worked well for us. And the Java was close enough to the C++ code that it was easier for us to kind of port some of the libraries we had rather than kind of starting over with Delphi. I think and most of the people in the shop had a C++ background, so rather than trying to teach a bunch of people Object Pascal, we picked up Java. And transition was pretty smooth for most of us.
What I remember right now is I attended a conference and there was a Borland speaker. and he was proud of the how it called two-way development. So he could start with code, then move to the visual editor and back to code, back and forth.
Uh-huh.
And I say it works very well. I can change the code whatever I like. And I say, okay, then delete please or rename the jbInit method. This was the crucial, I remember he did it and nothing worked, This was this was my, I think, the one and only hack, because he was so arrogant actually about that. So okay, and I had lots of trouble with JBuilder back then, and I said okay, then just jbInit. I remember exactly the method, but I really like JBuilder, and it was actually excellent. It looked nice. I still remember, there was like a strip with all the components at the top of the IDE, and it looked nice. It everything was nicer than the others, like the splash screen and the design of the IDE, and renaming started to work. So at one point of time, refactoring worked even. This was a big deal back then.
Yeah, we looked at, I think, Visual Age for Java was a thing back then, and
Visual Age for Java was even better regarding refactoring, but the problem was you never saw the entire source code. So Visual Age for Java stored the source code in a database, actually. So we had a huge project, and they have huge performance problems because of that.
Yeah.
It
seemed like it had a weird UI, too, where you had to drag lines to connect things or something. It was unintuitive for us, so we went JBuilder.
But
still, it was a great tool.
It was, I would say, 20 years ago, and the IDEs were great. That's the point, So it's not like this was like text edit. It was actually really, really nice, and it's not like a lot happened since then, right? It's not like if you say if you would show someone JBuilder 20 years ago, and then now the current IDEs, it's not like there's a huge difference between back and now. So of course their refactoring is nice, and they are faster because the machines are faster and Java is faster, but it is not like a revolution. It was more like an evolution.
Yeah, much more polished for sure. But those are the IDEs were fantastic.
And I mean, Visual Studio Code becomes more and more interesting, but the other IDEs, they are very similar to let's say Sun Java Workshop back then, or what we had, JBuilder or Visual Studio. Visual Cafe also from Symantec, was also one.
Yep.
So you did a lot of stuff with JBuilder, didn't you? That and it worked well for you. You said
it did. Yeah, it worked real well. It was kind of sad to see that one go. I guess it might still be around, but.
JBuilder?
I know Delphi is. JBuilder may.
No, the problem was Eclipse. Eclipse came out, and the refactoring in Eclipse was way better than in JBuilder. And this was reason for me to switch from JBuilder actually to Eclipse, because refactoring was very good at the beginning, and there were no plugins. You could just at the beginning, so you could just pick Eclipse. And it was very, very fast. And what JBuilder did then, JBuilder became a set of plugins on Eclipse.
Oh, that's right.
So what they did, and this was crazy idea, and then they just focus on they renamed themselves to how it's called, Embarcadero or something like this, and
I think Enterprise.
Enterprise was the Enterprise, and Embarcadero was, I think, the ALM, Application Lifecycle Management, and they say, okay, we are no more IDEs. We are this was and then nothing happened, right? And they also joined forces with Together, I think, in one point of time, right? It's Togethersoft, the UML tool. There's also like a JBuilder plugin or something. Interesting. What happened afterwards? So after your successful JBuilder project?
The project was successful. The company was not quite so much so. So I moved on from there before the company. It kind of the .com bust in the early 2000s. Took that company out. Or late 90s.
2001 was the problem.
I think that's right. So I moved on. That's when I moved on to that Delphi shop.
Okay.
There was a Hobby Lobby. It's an arts and crafts company here in the States, and they had a back office application that the stores used to enter all their sales information. So enter on the Delphi app, it would save it in a Paradox database, and then we would FTP data to servers at the office, and it would get processed. So So that was my primary responsibility there. Did a little bit of Java there. Wrote a SOAP web service using
Oh,
Apache Axis. And that was actually probably my first real foray into open source work.
hmm
I mean, obviously I'd been using it, but we had an issue. I was writing a SOAP web service to interact as a go-between for an AS400 based
hmm
DB2 database
hmm
and a .NET client external. So I had someone building a website using .NET C Sharp. So this web service was kind of intermediary inside the firewall. But there was some sort of a bug in the Access 2 library. So I downloaded the sources, made the change. Can't remember if I submitted it back upstream or not, but that was, I think, that's the first time I can remember making a change to an open source project.
But this was later than 2001. You mentioned C Sharp and Axis 2, so it was.
I I I think it might have been Axis 1,
Yeah.
and it would have been uh, somewhere between 2001 and 2004 or 5. So it might have been
Yeah,
Axis
sounds
1.
right. hmm
I think it was C Sharp they were using. I know we did some C Sharp at Hobby Lobby. C Sharp 1. It might have been VB.NET on the outside. I don't really know. It was a .NET. I know for sure because I know the guy that wrote it. But yeah, so kind of hacked the source code there and kind of fixed our bug and got the system working.
Yeah, C Sharp was came in 2000, earlier than I thought.
Okay.
So it could be C Sharp. And yeah, I also had some concurrency bugs with Axis, but I didn't like the Axis, so this was the problem. The SOAP was a problem.
Well, yeah, I did not enjoy SOAP at all,
Yeah.
but it was the only realistic option for us at the time. I mean, there was Corba and things like that, but going through a firewall across
Yeah,
multiple
exactly.
systems.
Exactly. This
SOAP
was the
was
huge
best choice.
problem with Corba. So I also I was very excited about SOAP because in Corba we had always to ask someone to open the ports and manage the firewall for us, and this was like
Yep.
mission impossible. And with SOAP
Yeah.
we could basically hack the system, so we can talk via port 80, and there was nothing to open. So I really enjoyed,
Yep.
but I didn't enjoy SOAP. I enjoyed the XML RPC. So this was a predecessor of SOAP. And it is more like, it looked like remote procedure call where it's actually what blogs are still using. So you can send, XML and say, invoke this method with this parameter. So it was nice. It was like RMI over XML, I would say. And SOAP
Yes.
was crazy because what they could do is, the routing and stuff no one used, but it bloated the entire spec. So it was just way too big for me.
Yeah, yeah. I actually kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but was involved with a project with the Federal Aviation Administration as a contractor, and we had SOAP web services
Okay.
that were sending large XML documents as the payload.
hmm
So we would take this XML document, you'd have to encode that, and then wrap it in the SOAP envelope and send that across the wire. And it's just not efficient, not fun to work with. But
Yeah, and in one point of time, they came to the conclusion or idea that you can actually send binary XML over SOAP. This was I forgot the names. Okay, but this starts to be crazy because the whole idea of XML is to be readable. So if you send binary XML over the wire, then why not just send binary data over the wire? This was crazy
Right.
times. Okay. So perfect. So what's interesting? You started with Java and moved back to Delphi. Usually it's the other way around. Someone starts with Delphi then goes to Java. So unusual
Yeah.
path. So and after
Well,
Delphi,
yeah.
you stick with Delphi. So you enjoyed Delphi actually. You did some work with Java. What was your opinion about, or what was your perception of Delphi after Java experience?
having used both Delphi and JBuilder a lot, Delphi was just so much faster.
Yeah.
It compiled to native code and is optimized for the platform. The development experience was largely the same. You had that same great little toolbar, just drag and drop, and I really did love writing desktop apps using Delphi. Um, but you know, when I was in college, we did everything on a Unix box, and I was really, and still am, but very big into portability. You know, not a big fan of vendor lock-in and stuff, and I knew Delphi was pretty locked into Windows. There was Kylix for a while that ran on Linux, but that never really took off and died eventually. So that's really kind of what led me away from that and more into the Java world. You know, like C and Unix is really kind of really where I got my start in any significant development work.
Okay.
So for me, the portability of Java kind of won out there.
So what happened after your Delphi experience?
Well, I left there. Yeah, and this actually is probably where our paths started to meet. Went to work for a local air conditioning company. They make large water-powered heating and air units for hotels, casinos, office buildings. Hydrocoil, I think is the term. But it was mostly a Java shop, and it had just a complete smorgasbord of technologies at play. There was a Struts app, there was some Swing apps, some custom frameworks at play. So when I got there, we kind of started the process of trying to standardize on a platform so that we can move from project to project more easily, and supporting them would be easier. And that's when I started looking at Java EE, and there was some Spring in the mix as well. And we started looking at different frameworks and trying to figure out what would work best for us. And we ended up settling on Java EE, although it was J2EE at the time, I believe, and GlassFish. That was when I first started working with GlassFish. So we, of course, we didn't rewrite applications, but anything new, we would typically use, I remember, JSF for sure, and I think Hibernate for persistence, and we would deploy on the GlassFish server.
You remember the version? Was 2 or 3?
I think it was going to be 2, because I think I ended up working on 3. I believe it was GlassFish 2. And, CDI wasn't a thing yet.
No.
But WebBeans, if you remember that, remember that. And Seam, JBoss Seam, we kind of experiment with that some. So yeah, and that's when I really started getting involved in the JCP and the Java community a little more fully there. Started working on the Mohara project.
But why this? If you work for the company, why you started to be involved in JCP, for instance?
Well, I wasn't working for Sun just yet. I was working, it was for the air conditioning company.
Yeah.
But we had, obviously we had interest in the spec doing certain things for us that it wasn't yet. So I got permission to start working on some of those things. And we developed, there were some JSF components that we developed and released as open source as part of our effort to give back.
A nice company, seems
but really
like. It was like is it a huge air conditioning company? Or, I mean...
It was, fairly large, a few hundred employees. It's not like thousands, but it was kind of a small IT shop. We had probably less than 10 people in the shop, handful of developers and a manager.
Because unusual that you could actually participate in the open source and in the specs, right? So it's actually a nice touch.
Yeah, well, my immediate manager, Mitch, is a great guy. Still friends with him today. Super sharp, and eager to give back and support those kinds of things. So it was a good environment for that, for sure.
So, and you started to participate back then in JCP and JSF, or
Yeah, I don't remember the timeline exactly. I don't think I didn't join. Eventually, I joined the expert group, but I was working on with the implementation, just like submitting bug fixes
okay?
and doing kind of community work, and eventually that increased over time. Eventually, actually leading to a job offer from Sun,
Okay.
stemming from my experience there at IEC.
Actually, nice, right? And what interests me,
Yeah.
what was actually the experience from the wild framework landscape to J2E? Was it like a smooth transition, or you like it, so it was productive, or
For me, it felt pretty smooth. I liked it. I think the other developers mostly did. It's
yeah, sure,
I don't remember anybody complaining, but it helped. I think a lot just in terms of allowing us to support. Someone may write an application over here, then have to work on that one, and you don't have to come into it trying to figure out what in the world's going on here. What are we using? It was the same set of tools and same basic project structure, so it was super easy to come up to speed on a different application and make a change and get it deployed. So everything was consistent, and it was real nice.
So actually, today I delivered a keynote at a conference, and there was a few sentences about Java EE and MicroProfile, and I thought, why I actually like it, because I could actually do whatever I like. So I could just pick and choose the libraries, and it will still work. But why I like it is because if I get a contract job or whatever, I can just pick this dependency, and I know that is everything included. And then the step two is to think about the business problem. So why I like it, I don't like the fiddling with all the plumbing, which will involve to evaluate all the APIs. And I think this is why I think the Jakarta EE or MicroProfile or similar APIs are so productive, because you get everything at once and will know more, and you try to implement something with this what you have. And so you constraining yourself a little bit, because you wouldn't do crazy stuff like akka or actors or whatever. So no, we just focus on this which is doable with the API, but you become automatically more productive. This at least my experience. So this is why this is actually hard to explain. And there was always a discussion, but Java is too big. It's like, yeah, I don't care. I don't have to use everything. So for me, if it is small enough and fast enough, so I don't have to look at all the APIs. I just pick whatever I have. So this is maybe my explanation why I like it.
Yeah, and we found that to be the case too. Like, we had Spring and all that, and one thing I liked about deploying to something like GlassFish was everything was there. I don't need to go hunt down this library, and Spring at the time, as I recall, was a little less polished than it is now. Trying to get different libraries working together sometimes is difficult. And there was a lot of XML in Spring at the time. I think it was about the time they were really transitioning to annotations. But with Java EE, it was had already made that annotation switch for a lot of that, and then of course everything is built in there. You've got persistence and transactions. We had remoting capabilities if we wanted to. GlassFish had at least kind of basic clustering if we needed it. So all that was kind of baked into one. So we could just then immediately focus on what's the business need we're trying to solve. So
exactly.
It was a huge win.
Yeah, and then you already used the Java E5, which was annotation driven, so there was no XML. So in my project, it just XML disappeared, except of course a little CDI, persistence and persistence XML, of course. Interesting. So and then you started to work for Sun. So you got an offer from Sun, or what was the story behind?
I did. Well, I had been very active in the GlassFish community. I think that's where you and I really first crossed paths with the GlassFish champions in 2006 or whatever that was. And then I just was active there, active in the JSF community, and Ken Paulson from the GlassFish console contacted me and said, "Hey, we've got a job opening. Are you interested?" And so I said, "Well, sure." And so that open source work and that community work kind of transitioned into going to work for Sun on GlassFish itself. So it was one of the highlights of my career. That was Sun was one of those kind of bucket list kind of companies for me.
Yeah.
So it was
This was something special. I never worked for Sun, but for me it was also special. The entire environment. I really like it and enjoy that. But there was not GlassFish champions. What I won one time an iPod because I found a lots of bugs, GlassFish bugs, and they were not called GlassFish champions. It was NetBeans had this where. NetBeans maturity or whatever. So where before the release, they are the community searches for bugs, and GlassFish had similar stuff, and they were maybe we met there back then.
Okay.
It was around 2006.
Like that,
yeah. And then you started to work at GlassFish V3 immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Worked on the admin console and did some of the REST administration for GlassFish. Did that for, I guess, 3 years.
So you worked with Ludo?
I did, yeah. Ludo, I'm trying to think. Ludo, Anissa, Bill, Shannon, Arun Gupta, and I'm going to forget. But yeah, a lot of really sharp people.
And how was the environment back at Sun? It was a great team. Was it a nice environment? And how was it back then?
Yeah, I loved it. Some people say it might have been the downfall of Sun, but it was very engineer driven. I mean, we had PMs and things, but kind of driving things, but they let us kind of work on things that made sense in our little area. There wasn't a lot of micromanagement. We didn't have a lot of meetings necessarily. It was a good creative, energetic environment in my part of the organization.
Yeah, it was also revolutionary. That's also my perception, because every conference something happened. So there was the Java manus jar, glassfish.jar, this thing, and the OSGI modularization, then the Grizzly project, with the Comet. So it was a huge stuff. Which I mean, GlassFish was huge and very, very innovative back then.
Yes, yeah, it was. I was just doing the console. But it was fun and exciting being part of such a high productivity creative team like that. But learned a lot.
Mm-hmm. But the console was important. For instance, back then I used GlassFish mainly because of the console. So WildFly didn't have such a console, back then. It was nothing comparing to GlassFish, and GlassFish had the console was not only usable and nice, it also had the performance flow. I forgot what the name was, where you could back then see what the performance of the application server. It was very usable and professional. So, what you did with the console? So what was your task?
Well, I mean, we kind of worked on all sorts of or on every part of it. I know I did a lot with the connection, the JCA, Java connectors and stuff. Did a lot on that. It's kind of all over. I actually did a lot of testing on it as well.
Okay.
There was a lot of JavaScript under the hood that had kind of grown up organically, and it's kind of a mess.
Okay.
Which, I mean, that just kind of happens in a large project. So we tried to rein that in a little bit and write some tests on it, some automated tests using Selenium. So, I mean, I spent many, many weeks on that trying to get testing going so that we could have a little more confidence that we hadn't broken something. So I did that, and then I worked, actually, I think with Ludo doing some of the REST admin stuff that underlied a lot of the console.
Yeah. What I remember is... what I wanted to have is that you can get the metrics via REST interface. And I had a chat with Ludo, and Ludo said, okay. And then he was on vacations, and after 2 weeks, he said, now it's done.
Yeah.
Here is it. It's like, you are crazy. And so, I was on vacations. Okay. So this was like, crazy time. This is what I really remember. He did something with annotations where he could automatically generate from the MBeans, I think, the REST interfaces. This was his work back then.
Yeah, and I worked with them on some of that for like the admin commands.
Hmm.
We would actually scan the class path and find any admin commands that are there and generate at runtime the REST endpoints and then deploy
Hmm.
those. So GlassFish was very modular. So if you wrote some sort of an extension for GlassFish and added that, then it would automatically get exposed via REST, since we were scanning the system using HK2 and things to identify those and create the REST endpoints.
We had a lots of conversations at Java 1 and conferences, but actually why? So I just try to remember what was our discussion point, because I liked actually the console. Hard to tell, right? So why we always
Yeah.
interacted at the conferences. So what was our topic back then? The console, or had you questions about projects and I explained what I do in my projects, or what was, our interest? Because
I
every conference we had
yeah.
a chat, always.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
I just try to remember now what was my problem that I always ask you to, or ask you, what, or I just maybe I talk about projects or best practices with Java EE, and they say, okay, I don't know, but it was interesting that actually we always have
Yeah.
had interaction at all Java
Hmm.
ones actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really recall what those early conversations were, but they go way back.
What I remember is there was a guy called Raminder Singh or Raminder Singh. This was the first conversation regarding
Okay.
console, because he was in charge of the performance part in the console. And I had some
Okay.
improvements, and there was my very first conversation with the GlassFish team, and he was really really nice. So see, he was supportive, and I said, okay, this is actually a nice team. So I didn't expect something like this,
Hmm.
and then maybe the second conversation was with you because of something in the console. I can just imagine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. So what happened then? So you worked for 3 years at GlassFish v3, right?
Yes. Well, Oracle bought us. I don't know, not quite a year and a half into my tenure there. So I did a little bit of work on WebLogic, and then just decided it was time to move on. So I joined a company called Netsuite that
Uh huh.
writes a large ERP system, working on their an e-commerce solution. There was a shop here in Oklahoma City called Element Fusion that NetSuite had purchased, and so they were porting their content management system to the NetSuite platform.
Is it Java
So
NetSuite
I
platform?
was, yes,
Okay.
but the Element Fusion platform was C sharp.
Ah, okay.
So so some sharp developers working on that, no pun intended there, but they didn't know Java prior to that. So um, I was kind of brought in to help provide some kind of senior Java experience on that. Um, so spent a little over 6 years there. 2 years after I joined NetSuite, Oracle bought NetSuite, so I was back at Oracle. So now it's Oracle NetSuite. So yeah, but spent a little over, I guess maybe a little over 5 years working on the commerce system there, all in Java. And it was an interesting environment. Our part of the system was a lot of JavaScript and some Java on the back end, but the bulk of the NetSuite system, very complex, very large system. It's been around since 1998, I think.
Okay.
So a lot of the code there predated some of the Java standards. So and then really some of the use cases didn't fit real well with the EE APIs anyway, so persistence and things.
Okay.
A lot of homegrown stuff still in the system, but working with that for a while, and then again just kind of felt it was time to move on. So I actually did a contract gig for about a year doing Kotlin and Spring,
Okay.
doing some IoT work. Pretty neat system, real sharp group of people, Staple Kernel, based out of Atlanta, Georgia, um, building a system for managing dispensers in restrooms, hotels, airports, uh, soap, paper towels, and things. They would report their status. Hey, I'm out of product. Hey, I'm jammed. So they could look at a mobile app and figure out what they need to go address, what they need to refill, and that sort of thing.
Almost Genie,
Um,
right? You remember Genie, Java Intelligent Network infrastructure back then,
uh-huh.
right?
Yep. Is a really cool system. Kotlin Spring deployed to Azure.
Hmm.
So I have to do some uh, I'm drawing a blank on the database there. Not Dynamo. That's
Cosmos
Amazon.
DB.
Cosmos. Yeah,
Yeah.
got to work with Cosmos and some other Azure properties, and so that was good.
You used
Uh,
functions or containers, ACI or functions or Azure App Service.
uh, we did have some functions deployed. Um, trying to think. I think they were written in Kotlin, but
Hmm.
we deployed our Spring apps in Kubernetes or Docker
Okay.
containers to
Okay. AKS.
the
Azure Container
yeah.
Service.
Uh,
Yeah,
yep.
Kubernetes
I wasn't
service.
involved. Yeah, I didn't do as much on that side of things as I would have liked. I'd love to have gotten deeper into the DevOps side of that, but um, yeah, very cool. But and then Mark Little contacted me at Red Hat and
Hmm.
about a position, and I took a while. We started talking for a little bit, and then COVID hit, and it kind of shut down hiring. And then when things started opening back up um, late last summer, um, finally able to work out a deal, and I finally joined the WildFly team at Red Hat last November, and that's what I'm working on now. So
So you're
doing
working on WildFly
WildFly
right
EAP
now.
work. I am. Yep.
No Quarkus.
Not directly. I work some with them, but
Interesting. So I didn't knew
my
that. I thought
yeah
you had just joined to know Red Hat. I thought that you immediately joined Red Hat. I didn't knew all the journey that you are a fresh Red Hat employee almost, right? 1 year or something.
yeah
Uh-huh.
yeah. Be 1 year in November. Yep.
Great news.
Yeah.
So
But
what do you do with WildFly?
I uh, I am the component lead for the microprofile metrics and open tracing components,
Wow.
which means I mean the primary responsibility there is integrating the libraries and making sure those work well for both WildFly and EAP, working with upstream communities and projects, kind of make sure that if we have any needs out of the software that we kind of get those addressed, or trying to help uh, play a part in the community
Hmm.
steering those products. And I also am the component lead for, well, we just added open telemetry support
Okay.
in WildFly 25. That's, I believe, is shipping today, WildFly 25 final. If it's not out yet, we're burning the bits right now. And hopefully for WildFly 26, don't quote me on that, but we're going to try to get micrometer support
Okay.
built into the base WildFly. So I'm working on integrating that right now. I own the bean validation integration. So, and all of that, it's kind of the same story. I integrate, I maintain that, make sure it works well, work with the upstream communities uh, to try to make sure our needs and interests are met as well as they can be, in a community driven project like that. And then uh, Red Hat management is real good. A lot like Sun, kind of letting us work on things that that are of interest. Obviously we have certain things we need to do for products and for customers, so we need to make sure those are met. But if there are other areas that we'd like to investigate or work on, as long as we're meeting those other requirements, we've got a great deal of latitude to investigate that. So I get to spend some time on Quarkus and kind of looking at some Archelian stuff here and there
Hmm.
as we need bug fixes and things
Hmm.
like that. So kind of got irons in a bunch of different fires.
Are you actually reusing something from Smallrye or Smallrye metrics, or you're building everything from scratch? So the metrics in JBoss, is this an own open source module, or is it based on Smallrye?
The microprofile metrics and open tracing are based on the Smallrye
Hmm.
projects. Open telemetry, we're just consuming those APIs, those artifacts directly from the open telemetry project.
Okay.
And micrometer, what I have right now is also consuming upstream directly. There's some discussion in the microprofile community, what's going to happen with the metrics, with the metric spec there, and how does it relate to micrometer, and those questions are kind of open. So there might be some need for a small Rye work kind of
Hmm.
integration or glue work there. But right now we're just consuming those directly for those two projects.
Complete different question, but yesterday there was the AX TV, so it's like monthly show where I answer all the questions in 1 hour. And there's one question regarding Jakarta and Spring. And there was a post from Jürgen Höller that they have basement alignment Spring in Jakarta EE. And someone in the comments said, okay, is now Spring implementing Jakarta EE? And Spring said, no, we are not Jakarta EE. We are not implementing the specs. We are integrating the specs. And then I thought about that. But if you take a look at WildFly, for instance, I would say WildFly is not implementing all the specs. You are also an integrator. So right now, the open telemetry, you are just consuming the spec. SmallRye, you are using the SmallRye. You are not implementing the metrics by yourself. Hibernate, JBoss just uses Hibernate. And of course, the entire package is certified. But I would say all application servers are more like integrators. I don't know whether there is one application server which implements all these specs from scratch. So they are always integrating external stuff, right?
Right.
So I don't
think
even
that's
know.
probably a fair assessment. Yeah.
So what is actually the difference then between Spring and WildFly?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Certainly there's
conceptually, from the architectural perspective. Of course, Spring is more than Java EE, so you have far more modules, but WildFly is also more than Java EE. You can use, I don't know, Keycloak, which is not a part of Java EE. So I would say it's similar, right? So for me, I just read this yesterday and I thought about this. But even though Payara, they have some SmallRye, OpenLiberty the same. They pick some OpenLiberty, something they implement by themselves. And Cumulus EE, I don't know whether you're aware of this runtime, they go just wild. They have lots of modules like, Ethereum and etcd integration with, I would say, they are very similar to Spring then. So I don't even know what the distinction is, because you could actually say now, if Spring would integrate all the Java EE modules, then this configuration could be even Jakarta EE compatible, right?
Yes. You get in some weird issues there, I think, with TCKs and
yeah, sure.
They don't say that publicly. But I think just from the hip, one of the big differentiators is, of course, deployment. Spring. How do you run a Spring app? But
Cumulus the same, Quarkus the same, Helidon the same, is very similar. Yeah, and even JBoss, I think the WildFly is able also to run a jar, right?
Yes, with the bootable jar. Yep. But if you're running like the full WildFly or EAP server, you can run it standalone mode. So you get there are a lot of services that are built into the application server that if you're running a single microservice, maybe you don't need. But if you're running a more complex application, or if you actually want to deploy multiple services to a single container, a little more hybrid model, you get a lot of management functionality from the application server, and then when you go into domain mode, you can control multiple application servers.
But this is already beyond Jakarta EE, right? So what you are describing is a WildFly feature. It was just not curious because you just mentioned you work with Spring Boot and Kotlin, and now WildFly. And I thought, okay, this could be an interesting discussion because for me, every application server is integrated, and they have, you say, the domain mode is just additional feature. Like in Spring, you could configure the entire Spring with Groovy, for instance, also additional features. I mean, everyone does interesting things. So this was just interesting thought yesterday because someone asked me this, and I say, actually, I don't see a lot of difference right now. It is a little bit marketing, maybe, right? So
I think it's probably mostly like runtime and management types of things that are the big differentiator there, because you do get a lot of API overlap between the two for sure.
Yeah, and what's it? I mean, WildFly was always huge with monitoring, so you could monitor lots of the stuff, and you could even you go through the JBoss CLI, you can fetch the metrics there. So what are actually the functional features now, new features in 25 and 26 regarding monitoring or open tracing or whatever? Is something exciting here, or just more standardized?
Yeah, well, with 25, we do add the open telemetry support, open tracing, and on the metric side, not a whole lot has changed there.
Okay.
But we, it's hard to say, long term, given the uncertainty around those open tracing or the microprofile specs. But the industry seems to be moving toward open telemetry, micrometer and that sort of thing. So we're trying to set up WildFly and EAP as good options for people that want to use those in their environment. In terms of other features for WildFly 25, it'll run on Job 17 now.
Okay.
I believe we've crushed all those, and we're trying to get things set up on the security side. We've removed legacy security and kind of getting ready for the possible removal of the security manager from the JDK. That's going to be a thorny issue, I think, for a lot of application server vendors. But a lot of work there. Trying to think. I'd have to look at the changelog to see for sure. But those are the big ones that I've at least been.
This is the problem. Exactly the same. Someone asked me yesterday, "What is my favorite, Java 17 feature?" And it's hard to tell because I use all the time Java 16. And there is not a lot of difference between 16 and 17, So if someone asks you such a question and you work entire time with WildFly, it is hard to tell. You don't know exactly, what was before 25 and what is 25, right? So if you just see, commit after commit, and then the release comes, someone asks you what's new. So I got no idea because I'm working all the time with that, right?
I don't know when it landed, but
actually, great news. So WildFly is doing really well. So something happens, or something happens a lot with WildFly, and there's lots of commitment here.
A lot of work going on. A lot of certainly internally, a lot of energy and excitement going into it, and big plans for 26 and beyond. And of course, that'll lead into EAP 8. They're trying to finalize the plans on that with EE10 support. Looks like EE10 is finally moving along at a good clip. So. We're trying to get ready to support that, and Jakarta namespace changes. We've got to get that supported. I think we're going to try and get that into 26, if that makes sense. So,
any plans with GraalVM, or is this or Mandrel, or is it like too hard?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That would be. We do a lot of reflection in an application server. So I think GraalVM would be a tough one to pull off.
We need Ludo again for vacations, So Ludo needs 2 weeks vacations and do it.
Yeah, see if he wants a short-term contract.
Yeah, exactly.
He could probably pull it off. He is a very sharp guy for sure.
A nice guy. So I had him on the podcast. He works on Google App Engine. One question regarding micrometer or micrometers is hard to pronounce for me. But what I don't like at all is, the fact that, or what I liked in MicroProfile metrics, were the scopes or registries. You had application, vendor, and base. And in micrometer, everything is flat, which is not nice because if you're an application developer, I was only interested in my application, how it's called, scope, right? Or registry, these or namespace, the application namespace, and I ignored everything else. And I'd already chatted with the Quarkus people, say, but you could do this, but I know I can do this, but I have to do this, right? With MicroProfile metrics, I already got it for free. So this was the point.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? I actually, to be honest, I don't understand still the excitement around micrometer because it is, I understand if you're a vendor, it is more flexible and you can provide your own metrics. But from the Javaistic point of view, I'm only interested in my business metrics. I only would like to have my application namespace and nothing else. And whether a vendor is happy or unhappy, this is actually the job of the application server provider or vendor, right?
Yeah, honestly, I've not done enough consuming those metrics to really have a good opinion on that. Certainly now, you would have to get a hold of that registry and then filter out what you want, which is a little more work for the application for sure. It seems like, at least from the WildFly perspective or the MP perspective, we're kind of exporting these to some kind of a collector, Jaeger or whatever, and they all kind of get dumped together. It seems like for the most part. So your kind of downstream collector seeing them all anyway. So, but I don't have a personal opinion on whether or not that's a good change or not.
But what I did usually, for instance, I performed black box tests or system tests, and then I called via REST interface the metrics endpoint, and saw whether it is actually working as expected. this is one of the use cases in lots of projects. So, and if the endpoint is no more there and I have to implement it by myself, it's a little bit more friction. It's not like,
True.
and this is a part of code which I don't like to see, because, this is the only plumbing I have with the metrics. I actually recorded a screencast and tried to play it with it, but I'm not happy with it, because this is not, it's not convention over configuration. It is actually configuration over convention. So I'm just searching for the use cases, why everyone is so excited about micrometer. And for me, it's maybe low-level plumbing. I would say micrometer is maybe, the base, like JDBC is the base for Hibernate. And then the microprofile metric should use micrometer to expose, the namespaces. This would be the proper approach.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
On the spec space. But I know I don't know if you know Erin Schnabel, I think.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't butcher her last name. From the Quarkus team. She has a lot of really good technical reasons why she prefers micrometer over the microprofile metrics. So she'd be a really good resource. She's got some. She's been working with the technology a little longer. And she's got some good practical reasons why.
We had already chatted on the podcast about that. So because she had a session with I forgot the card game with the monsters.
Was it Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, exactly. And and we had to talk about that. And there were some bugs in microprofile metrics. Okay, but no. But she really likes micrometer, so and she likes. My understanding was they had lots of requests from the vendors, because not everyone is Prometheus, and there were other formats, and micrometer can provide it out of the box, and microprofile metrics was more Prometheus based, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think there was some issues even there with the MP metrics. Export format wasn't quite Prometheus compliant or something. There's something that wasn't quite right on the output side of things that was problematic as well.
Yeah. Okay, very. So, what is the next exciting release of WildFly? What do you are most excited about?
Well, we
from your perspective,
switched the branch over to work on WildFly 26, so we're going to get to start looking ahead to EE10. And part of that is going to be that we got to get everything converted to the Jakarta namespace, and then we can start consuming some of those EE10 APIs as they start being produced. So I'm kind of a sucker for new and shiny, so I always like to see new spec revisions.
Okay.
to see what's coming out. So I'm anxious to see where EE10 goes, and then what we can do with that as we integrate that into WildFly and EAP. EAP8 should be a good big release for the product, and bring in lots of new technologies. So.
And any plans to go more towards how it's called, the jar deployment, like Quarkus like feeling, or?
Well, I mean we've got the bootable jar support.
Yeah.
And it's definitely got management buy-in, so that wasn't something one of the engineers kind of sneaked in there, and we're just kind of hoping it lasts. But it's PMs and everybody are on board with that, so I expect we'll see long-term. Well, I hate to say support because I don't want to commit Red Hat support to something, but it will be available long-term.
Okay.
I don't think we'll ever get away, unless EE moves, but we'll never get away from ear and war deployments and kind of things. But
sure.
I think the bootable jar is something that WildFly will see supported for a long time coming.
And would be bootable war, maybe, would be also interesting.
That's true, yeah.
like Jenkins.
Yeah. Oh, boy, I forgot about that. That's a throwback. I haven't had to deal with CI in a long time. So
okay.
Thankful for a good DevOps department.
Now, are you a fanboy?
I do. I do love that Fender. That was an anniversary gift for my wife last year, 20 years. But I'm also a big fan of the German-made Warwick sitting there right beside it.
So you're playing guitar. This is.
Those are bass guitars. Yeah.
All bass guitars. Okay. Which kind of music are you playing?
Well, I say primarily, almost exclusively. I play in my church's orchestra and a praise band, so a lot of orchestral type stuff. Personally, I listen to rock and metal, so I like to.
This is what I wanted to say. I was like, okay, is it in church? Is it like heavy metal? And so what I did.
It's not a heavy metal church, no. But I do like if I need a break, I'll pull out some music and play along with something you might hear on the radio as best I can. So
okay. So I think from Metallica, For Whom the Bell Tolls, right? So something like this on the bass.
Oh man, I wish.
No, is it
Cliff
hard?
Burton is probably a little above me.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Cliff was good. I'm no Cliff.
Yeah, but Cliff, I mean, the next guy, the third guy now, right? The Cliff was the first one, then the next one came.
Yeah. Jason Newsted.
Jason,
yep.
Exactly. But
yeah.
you are better than Jason, right? So.
Well, I'm going to go and say no.
Okay.
I would like to be, but it's hard to compete with someone that does that professionally.
Yeah, sure. It was just fun. So it was really nice to meet you again now. Yeah. So all the memories. Yeah. And for you, it's almost like, from GlassFish back to WildFly. It's very, very similar, I would say, environment, right?
It is in a lot of ways. The product is the same but different. But it's a great technical environment. Management super supportive, and there's a lot of freedom to experiment and learn. And I'm surrounded again, as usual, with just really sharp and friendly engineers that I get to learn from and contribute with. So it's good. I like it a lot.
Have you maybe met some GlassFish or Sun people from your team back then, or are you alone?
Of course, now that you ask, I'm going to blank on his name. John
Klingen.
Yeah. He and I talked some of the microprofile stuff.
Nice. Okay, exactly. John was the manager for GlassFish, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, John's a good guy, so it was good to be able to hook back up with him again. And of course, a lot of the guys I worked with at Sun seems like are either at Google or Microsoft these days. So, but there are a lot of people that I met through the JSF work over the years that I've gotten to hook back up with in a professional setting, on the same team and things. Mm-hmm. So it's been kind of fun to meet back up with them for sure.
Thank you. Where people can find you on the internet, Twitter handle and...
Well, I am Jason D. Lee on Twitter, and my website is jasondl.ee.
That's why very good.
These days. So Twitter and my blog are primarily where you can find me.
Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure. Good to see you again. Bye.